Hey, welcome to Humans of MetaGame, a meta radio podcast about, well, the humans of MetaGame. We'll be interviewing the players and patrons of MetaGame about who they are, how they got here, why are they here, and why do they even like MetaGame? Why? Welcome, Alec. Finally having you on.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. Got a lot going on, like a lot of people in the space, I guess, or a lot of people in metagame. But yeah, so I'm Alec. I've been hacking on metagame and involved in the community for it's been a little over a year now. I want to say it's been a lot of fun. I live in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I've been here for a while now. I actually grew up in northern New York. Came out here after school to kind of be in the mountains and haven't left. So yeah, I dig it here. And yeah, I've been a software developer for 15 years professionally. Kind of bounced around quite a bit. I started for about 3 years just as like a normal employee out here in Salt Lake, and then went freelance in 2010. And then I've pretty much been doing that ever since. So it's been a while. It's been a lot of fun. Allowed for like pretty good work-life balance. I've mostly been able to take time off whenever I want and kind of work on projects that are, technically interesting but not very meaningful. I can't actually think of any like actually meaningful projects that I've worked on professionally in the 11 years that I've been doing it as a freelancer, which is,
What kind of companies did you work for?
I did a lot of work early on for like digital marketing agencies. So I was doing like landing pages, like really like rich interactions. So like the home page for like another agency, I think was one of my first projects, and I had like a lot of like heavy like interactive JavaScript stuff and like a really nice design. So I worked with pretty top tier graphic designers for a while, which was a really interesting experience because I kind of started to understand kind of what differentiates people in the design space, at least for like interactive design. But like, it was frustrating because I would build something and then it'd be done and I'd move on to another project, and then like 5 months later I'd like go to look at that thing that I built and it'd be like totally gone. They like replaced it with something else. And that just kept happening over and over again. And that's like, that's not uncommon in software. Like, I don't know what the average life expectancy for any piece of software is, but it's definitely a lot less in like the ad industry. So that was kind of frustrating. And it took a while before I worked on something that like kind of stuck around for a bit and was actually getting used. And like not even, it took probably 10 years until I found my current mostly full-time gig where, I'm working on the back end for an app that sees like, I don't know, 300 daily users, and it gets hit pretty hard. So that's been a very useful thing to work on. And it's like, again, like not meaningful, but it's, every project I work on, I learn a lot, and like freelancing and being a contractor for this long has like made me pretty, like, I feel like I've kind of seen it all in terms of like different types of software, and I've done the whole full stack thing for a long time and have really like designed databases, designed systems, like a little bit of graphic design, but that's definitely not my strong suit, especially after seeing what actually talented people can do. But yeah, it's been really fun. I feel really grateful to have been able to do this. It affords like a pretty low key lifestyle. I get paid pretty well, and I've had a lot of time flexibility to go off and have lots of adventures over the years.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, it's been fun.
You went from like only freelancing to working like part time for one company, then freelancing or doing whatever you want for the rest of the time.
Yeah, I mean, I was I started billing hourly, like most freelancers, and then found that like I never really worked that much in any given day. And by work, I mean like sitting at my computer, like typing in code, And over the years, I started to kind of change my billing model where it wasn't like so focused on the time, and I tried to bill in like greater and greater increments of time so that my the focus was not so much on the time spent doing things, because I found that I can get things done generally pretty quickly, and especially compared to a lot of other developers. But then like your hourly rate can only be so much before people are like, WTF, like I'm not going to pay you that much money. And so starting to go like a daily billing model, and then eventually like I started going all the way up to like a monthly billing rate, where I felt like it was fair, and like it was reasonably cost effective for my employers over the years. So
Right. Makes sense.
oh yeah, your question was whether I work part time. So kinda, not really. I mean, I work pretty much every day. I work like a normal Monday through Friday, but it's not like 9 to 5. It's like I kind of most of my working hours are during that time, but there's definitely some flexibility. And pretty much every project I've done is like a small team, or I'm just working on my own, except for my current gig where I'm like like an augmented kind of employee. I'm like an augmented, so it's like staff augmentation, where I'm a contractor, like coming into a company and basically working on their team, but I'm a contractor, and I'm like as much as part of the team as anybody else.
Yeah, makes sense. That's cool. That feels, at least for me, it would be much better than just, yeah, like just being a contractor without any sort of feeling of being in a team.
Yeah. I missed that for a while, and I was with COVID, like everyone's working from home, and I've been doing it for like I don't know, 12 years now. And for me, like I'm really curious how things are going to change or not, because like I found after like 3 or 4 years of doing it, where I was just had a home office, had a desk, like I'd just be sitting at home like tapping on a computer all day, and like not really talking to people, just because that was the nature of my work and still is for the most part. But yeah, like by the end of the day, I'd be like, oh god, I need to get out of here. And so eventually, like when I started freelancing, like around the time that I met my now wife, and she convinced me. It took about a year or so to be like, Alec, really need to go get some like office space or like a shared desk or something. And so finally, in like I think it was 2015, I went and started working out of a co-working space. Started full time, and now I've got a nice situation where I'm at home in the mornings, and then like have lunch with my family, and then go into the office for like a few hours in the afternoon, and that kind of breaks it up nicely.
Nice. Yeah, definitely doesn't feel so good working from home the whole day. And for me, like I work in the room that I'm also sleeping in. Just in this room for so long every day. Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna mess with your sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. You said that none of the projects you were working on were not were like really. Don't remember what exact word you said, but like not really fulfilling or impactful or something like that.
Yeah, like none of them were like moving humanity forward in any meaningful way, or even like trivial way. It's just like helping, and like the vast majority of corporate jobs are like that, and especially I feel like in the tech sector. So like I never really focused on that, and it never really mattered that much to me, just because like everything else was pretty good. Like I was working the hours I wanted to. Like I was always having fun doing my job. I love writing code, and I get into flow states like every day, and it's like really quite wonderful. But I'm a little bit older now. I'm in my mid 30s, and it's like I kind of see where things are going from like trajectory, and like I feel like there's like a moral imperative to be doing something that's actually setting the groundwork for a more like resilient future. It's kind of the way I like to look at it. And that's what brought me to metagame. I was like, there's been a long path to end up here, but like at the end of the day, it was like I spent like 3 or 4 years kind of searching around, trying to figure out what was going on in the world, and listening to podcasts and reading, articles and trying to find like what was the next step for me. Like I knew that I wanted to get involved in something that was actually meaningful and that I believed in, but I still wanted to use like these like super valuable technical skills that I have. And like there's like lots of things that are useful and are fairly helpful in like a more turbulent world, which I think we're coming into, permaculture and like gardening and that sort of thing. But it's like I have no experience doing that, and there's no transition path for like your livelihood for doing that sort of thing. And so like I felt like it made sense to find something where I could use these tech skills and still like contribute to something that I see as like actually helping us transition to like a better world. So that's kind of what brought me to the crypto scene and metagame specifically.
And have you found like were there any projects that were like competing for your attention besides metagame?
Yeah, not really. It's pretty funny. Like I remember you came out of the Stoa. It was like I think like September or October of last year, 2020. And I think you called the talk. It was like, or no, the like tagline for your talk was like, metagame, like just some kids trying to build like a new society, a new socio-economic system, and I was like, ooh, that's very interesting.
Yeah. The title was metagame, a game B of sorts. and then that was like the description.
Yeah, totally. And I was like, ooh, this is very interesting. I was like very interested in the whole game B space for a while, but it was always very nebulous. I felt like there's a lot of talk about it on podcasts, and all of the conversation around it was all like theoretical, and it seemed like there's nothing actually applied to it. And so it was kind of frustrating. I was like, yes, I agree with all of what you're saying, but it's like, how do we actually move forward?
Absolutely nothing tangible.
Yeah, nothing tangible. Like I didn't see any projects being spun up to actually do anything.
Yeah, and like some of the founders were even like in that sort of thing, like the Tao that can be named is not the real Tao.
And it's like, yes, like from a philosophical point of view,
You cannot build game B. It has to emerge.
yeah,
Yeah, but it's emerging because you want to build it.
right. And I think there's a lot of wisdom there, but it's like, like eventually you got to do something. And I think it's best to just like do something that kind of feels right and is oriented towards like this better world that is possible. In Charles Eisenstein's words, yeah, I just didn't see anything, and there wasn't anything like within those communities that that like resonated with me, that I felt like I was especially well suited to work on, and I assume that's kind of still the case. I haven't really been that involved since I started with metagame with all that stuff beyond just like listening. I'm still fairly well paying attention to what's going on in that space, and there are like heavy overlaps with the like Ethereum crypto community and other like spaces that are interesting.
And I just want to say that you, like you said, listen to a lot of podcasts, and related to this, were you also listening to the Future Thinkers, maybe?
Yeah, Future Thinkers was actually the first one. I think I was googling for like civilization collapse or something, like something like super dark like that, and like
Daniel Schmachtenberger.
yeah, Schmachtenberger and Jordan Hall and those.
I edited that episode.
Oh really? Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, that was my first freelancing job, like freelancing work that I did. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah, there was like 2 or 3 conversations that just like blew my mind. And I was like, this like everything like made sense with what they were saying. And I was like, oh man, like, and I wanted more, like, and I started following pretty much everything that those two guys were saying, and I'm still like doing that to some extent, and then also trying to like seek out criticisms, because like it's important not to get too like to drink the Kool-Aid too much from one particular person.
Right, right. I've realized that a lot of people in crypto haven't even heard about the game B, and from the beginning, like, that's really what I was
thinking with metagame, like not metagame as in a game, but like alluding to the game B, and really wanted to make it like an intersection of like first of all, yeah, all of these sort of movements of people that are imagining a different kind of future. But so far, like yeah, a lot of, most of, like pretty much everyone that got into metagame got into it through crypto, and most of them don't even know about this stuff. And I think it's really awesome. It's really awesome that you came from exactly from there. And yeah, do you want to like get into the game B a bit?
Yeah, like it kind of makes sense, and it probably shows in like the type of involvement that I have in metagame. Like, I don't really pay attention that much to what's going on in the crypto space. I mean, I am a little bit more now because I'm like it's more tangible and it's more relevant to what's going on in metagame. But it's like I'm definitely not like a crypto fanboy. Like I don't see like crypto as the solution to a better world. I see it as a means of transitioning to something hopefully more sustainable. It just seems still a little bit too many things that it's dependent on, and it's too there's so much infrastructure that's necessary for crypto to even like continue to exist. All of our like electrical and fiber optic and communication infrastructure, like the global supply chains that allow our phones and computers to be made quickly and relatively cheaply. It's like all of those things are exist because of the current world that we live in. Game A, Moloch, whatever you want to call it. And it's this is like a kind of miraculous world that we live in already, and the whole crypto thing doesn't even exist without all of that. And so if any of those foundations like start to fall away, it's like, I feel like crypto, there's no path forward. Within the Game B movement, there's a series on the Stoa about doomer optimism. Basically, there's like a few people that have gone to, most of them have gone to like Central or South America to kind of do homesteading and work on like regenerative agriculture or just like earth regeneration practices. And there's like 3 or 4 episodes in this series, and it was really good. And I thought it was like there were like 3 or 4 in this particular series. I think what they're doing is like much more in alignment with something that's actually like sustainable in 100 years. It is like very necessary and tangible, and like you're growing your own food. You're kind of obviously you're still somewhat dependent on the greater infrastructure and community, but it's much more resilient than transactions going over the internet.
You're right. The Roberto, the guy that owns the liminal village, he had also like a fairly simple idea to help like small towns. Just like, what if every small town had a like big screen in the town square where every person can just post what they need and what they are offering, and just with like simply being able to do that and would allow people to exchange things and without like needing money, not just posting what you need and what you offer, but generally for coordinating stuff, because yeah, towns don't really have anything like that. Like it's easier to coordinate communities online because we have all of these tools for like tracking work that's going on, or like better communications and whatever, but a small town doesn't have it. That
Yeah, totally. And that's an interesting segue because like for crypto, I guess when I got into metagame or started learning about like decentralized government and inventing your own currencies and that sort of thing, like I saw it as a means of empowering communities and like organizations to function better and to coordinate better. And I still think that's like a really effective means of doing that and of going through that transition. And so I actually found the common stack before I found metagame. Kind of like did a bit of research into that, and they're like pretty heavy into the token engineering stuff, and it was like kind of abstract and hard to understand. But I was like, this is like very cool that you're building software to support the commons. Like, yes, like this needs to happen, and it makes a lot of sense. I don't know what their like long-term vision is in terms of like how that software gets utilized, but that intersection between crypto and the real world is like really what I'm interested in.
Right. And there's finally starting to be more of that. Like so far, it's been so focused only on the digital and more like starting to get into like virtual worlds and all of that. And for me, that's like the least interesting part.
Yeah, totally. It's just like, I mean, it makes sense that that exists because there's a huge amount of people that are interested in crypto because it's an exciting new world and affords lots of different opportunities. But like, the whole like metaverse thing, like I see it as just like another way of like bypassing some problems in your life.
Yeah, making it easy to forget that everything is going to shit.
Yeah, totally. There's going to be more of that for sure. Like I'm not super optimistic about like the next 20 years or so. And yeah, like we need people like going all in on healing and self-improvement and putting their efforts into actually trying to make things better. But I feel like we're also like as a society, there's just so much trauma that's like really hard for people to kind of, you know, think outside of themselves and to appreciate like, the miracle that is like modern Western life. Also the seriousness of the predicament that we're in like globally. And that's going to take like a lot of people to go all in, kind of like what you're doing. I mean, that's why like joining MetaGame was so inspirational. I was like, yeah, like the vision is really big, and that's cool.
Right. Yeah, but yeah, most people barely have time to deal with their own problems, let alone like try to think about bigger societal problems. And I've just been super lucky to even have the opportunity to like be able to start something like metagame because like yeah, it requires a lot of time that to get started and yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, me too. Like, I only have time to work on this because I am a software developer that's in like huge demand, and I also had a privileged upbringing, and so there's all that affords all sorts of different things, and realize the importance of taking care of yourself and mental health and all of that, and like that's why I can contribute, and that's also why I've had time to kind of go through the like self healing to be able to to like think about these things, and to actually like focus on them. And that's why like I see crypto and a lot of these other things just as like a transition, like something like UBI. Like I'm very pro UBI, mainly just because I think it would just take the pressure off of people, and I think it's probably okay for the most part that some non-negligible amount of people living on UBI would not work. Like I don't see that as a problem, and like it would allow them to do that personal work to heal, the traumas of the past, to like hopefully disconnect from the whole like materialist capitalist economy and society, in order to like step back and like realize what's going on, and hey, like we kind of have to coordinate and figure out a way to build a world that's actually sustainable. But I don't know, maybe I'm naive.
No, I mean yeah, like the most people just say, oh yeah, you give people money without having to work, and they will just not work and not do anything. But yeah, like I see, just like on my personal case, like that. No, I didn't stop working. I'm working harder than I ever worked, just because I'm able to focus on things that I actually care about, and I'm not gonna chill. Like no.
Yeah, totally. There's definitely questions like for me, if you do something like UBI, where, and we're kind of seeing that at a small scale already in the US with, the we've had pretty rich unemployment benefits for a while, and like there's all these like child tax credits, and we're already seeing like there's more jobs than people that want to work on them because like our like safety net has gotten a little bit better. I mean, there's a long way to go, but like already like employers are having a hard time like finding people to do basic stuff like line cooks at restaurants and janitors and that sort of thing. And it's like with UBI, like I don't really see how like it doesn't seem like anyone really wants to do those jobs. And if
There will be a problem here in Croatia. Like during the summer, they also like can't find enough waitresses and waiters and like people to work in the restaurants and that sort of stuff. Like it's always in demand. And yeah, if people were getting basic income, those things would be even in higher demand.
yeah, and I think like a greater focus on the small scale and like within a particular like restaurant or I'm not super knowledgeable about like food service industry, but it's like theoretically if jobs weren't so specialized, then you could kind of rotate through. Oh, like Alex, it's Tuesday. Alex in charge of cleaning the toilets, and you're kind of rotating through it, and hopefully, like there's like something in there, or it's like a part-time job or something where it's you're doing something that is motivating enough, and like for you to be okay with the like shit job.
That's how I see like these things also like being taken. Just if we were building like a new village, and there would be obviously these kind of jobs, and yeah, we just saw that like everybody could not really freelance, but yeah, I guess freelance in a way, in a sense that they put their own schedule for what they want to be doing, and then like some of those jobs are not so terrible if you just have to do them one day. It's just that they're so like repetitive and like nah, you would never do them full time, but once a week, why not?
Yeah, hopefully. I mean,
And they would also start be getting paid more, like if they're like in such demand.
yeah, totally. Like the shit jobs should probably be getting paid more just because no one wants to do them. Therefore, like by definition, they're more valuable. Yeah, I did a fair amount of research into intentional communities about a year ago. Like COVID hit, and I'm already like a slight like doomsdayer. And I was like, okay, like what are some paths for it here? And started researching like intentional communities, and the future thinkers guys were are still, as far as I know, they're still doing their like smart village. And I see those projects being really important in terms of just figuring out some things that work. And I like started looking at, there are a few like AMAs on Reddit from people that lived in some of these communities, and I forget this particular one, but the one guy was saying that like it was some paper that someone wrote on intentional communities, and basically like from what I remember, the one of the things that all the successful communities had in common was that everyone, there was compulsory work, and that everyone, like there's some sort of like social capital involved with like contributing, and if you didn't have that, it didn't work, which makes sense. Like freeloaders are real, and it's like, and there are a certain amount of people that like aren't ever gonna want to like do any manual labor, and it's like, well, that doesn't really work. It's probably not good for them either. There's some amount of guilt, even if they will not never admit it, that they're just kind of sitting around while everyone else is doing all the work.
Right, and then those that are doing work get annoyed and start doing less work or leave.
Yep.
Have to solve these problems.
Yep. Yeah, I was gonna say, like, in the crypto world, there's a lot of references to Ostrom and her like work in proving the fallacy of where everyone's like, oh, the like race to the bottom dynamics.
Oh, the tragedy of the commons.
Yeah, exactly. And that, like, I find that quite fascinating. And from what I remember, it's like it's like 10 or 12 guidelines that if you follow all of them, there's no longer a race to the bottom or a tragedy of the commons. And so I feel like in the crypto world, there's some work towards like systems to implement them in a way that's potentially scalable. And like I find that quite fascinating and hopeful.
Yeah, the Commons Tech wrote a really great article about the tragedy of the commons and the 8 principles in the crypto, like applied crypto, like a few years ago. It's really good.
Yeah, and I feel like, experimenting in digital communities is a good place to start, but I don't know how much of that actually translates to like real communities. And so like very interested, and hopefully this happens in the next like 5 years or so, where we can actually empower some, whether it's, it probably makes more sense for like the initial implementations of something like the common stack of tools to be used for like a, something like regenerative network of groups that are like on the ground, like coordinating resources amongst the network, and then also at a smaller scale amongst the people actually like doing the work.
Right. Yeah, like that's what I always wanted to do, like going back to the intentional communities and these sort of like eco villages. That's what I actually wanted to do, like before metagame, before any of this stuff. I just figured it's much easier to start in the digital. There's like less starting costs. Mm, It seemed much easier.
Yeah, and with the internet, yeah, it's easier to find your tribe also.
And bring people and everything. But I also like now when I was in Lisbon for the LisCon, I met this guy that had actually a company that was like a Airbnb for eco villages, and then they shut down because I think he couldn't find investors because he really didn't want to charge money or whatever, something like that. Like he really didn't care about the business side of it. He just wanted to create this network, and so he had to shut it down. But he still has the whole network, and I talked to him about yeah, getting him on the podcast as well, and maybe trying to bring some of these communities to metagame as well. And there's some in the Bloom network as well, and the one that the Common Stack give it people are in Costa Rica, some eco village as well. We should yeah, be onboarding more of them. We just haven't really focused on that yet.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that, like how some of these, aligned communities are leveraging these like blockchain technologies to empower themselves. And I don't know if this is actually happening in real life or not. I imagine it is to some extent, and I'd love to like hear some podcasts or interviews or something about more of that stuff, because like the Stoa is kind of my main place to kind of hear about cutting edge developments in that arena, but there isn't really a lot with crypto. And so I feel like these things are happening, but I'm not really aware of them. And I think it would be pretty motivating to hear some of that.
I think like actual crypto, mainly what you could do is like the bootstrapping with something like the Common Stack, the bonding curve, or generally just for making community currencies. And a great example is the grassroots economics. You know that project?
No?
So there's a village in Africa, and they made a token that's backed by DAI, but only like 20% of it is backed or something like that. And then they minted a bunch of tokens that can be traded. Well, it's similar to what we have with seeds, but it's backed by a stable coin instead of ETH. And they just use it to like facilitate exchange of stuff in the village, because like they had all these things that people can do, or like from services to like different products that they can make, but they didn't really have any money to facilitate that exchange, and so they started this currency.
So who is providing liquidity?
I don't know how it works exactly. Either not even sure how the project got started, but if the project is from outside the village, then I'm guessing that the project somehow raised some money for the village, and maybe people in the village also did like a fundraise to get some of those some of that initial supply. I'm not sure, but yeah, you need something, but you don't need like as much as you would usually need, which is everything. You need like 10-20% of that, or even nothing. Like in our case, seeds start with like zero backing, but then you need to like bring in tourists or like convince other people to put in money to the token. But yeah, for like the bootstrapping phase, you can just start it. Like the way it worked in MetaGame, I just had a Google sheet and I said, okay, 1 hour of my time is worth 10 seeds. And then how much are 10 seeds worth? Well, how much you value your time, like compared to what I did. And then when I did something less impactful, I would put in less. Or when I did something more impactful, I would put in like maybe 15 seeds. That's as simple as that, how it started. Like,
Yeah, that's so wild. Like I'm fascinated with how like traditional startups, you go and you raise a bunch of money and then use that money to go do stuff. It's like the incentives are never perfectly aligned with that, and that's why like I actually started a quote unquote startup like 4 years ago, and I never wanted to raise money because I knew I would be beholden to investors and they were going to get me to do things I didn't want to do. And I was like, I don't really think that's worth it. So we're going to try and bootstrap, and that's hard, but that sort of thing is a lot easier if there's like a really well-defined mission that everyone really believes in. Like if that's the case, then I think like it's way easier to get started, and like you don't necessarily like you need some capital in order to like transact with the greater world, but if you're living, especially if you're living somewhere with a lower cost of living, like it's really interesting how you can create a currency just for your own organization and use that to like govern most of what's going on within that circle. But again, like you have to provide something for like the greater community around your like tightly focused one to be able to trade and do that sort of thing. It's much more flexible than in the capitalist economy where like by definition your example with that guy where with the Airbnb project where like any investor is interested in extracting some amount of value from the system, and it's like, well, at the beginning there's not enough value to actually be extracted. So it's like it's very vulnerable, and it would have to grow to some amount for there to actually be enough free currency to kind of move out of the system in order for any investor to be interested in some amount of gains.
right? I feel like in some ways it's actually cheaper to make it in the real world, at least if you have a place. So like because the more decentralized, the more expensive because you have people living all over the world, and then in that case, these people need to pay rent. They need to buy food in those places. But if we were all in a single place, we could just produce our own food and not have to pay rent. Like if it's just a bunch of people in a single location, it's easier to make it sustainable without needing the inflow of money.
Yep. Back to the intentional communities, which is kind of the whole point, right?
I also have a part of the solution for the problem we're talking about with raising. So I think have a bit of a problem with raising just by the nature of the idea of metagame, because investors really do seem to like want really precise and like really detailed what is going to be achieved, like what specific project and what's like everything about it like focused on that. And metagame is like, oh, we have a podcast, we have videos, we have meetups, we have profiles, we have so many different things. So that's much harder to pitch. But the way I want to at least keep investors away from fucking it up once we have investors is it like, yeah, metagame, there will be a seed fund DAO that the investors will have control over, but metagame itself will still be democratic. So yeah, they will have some control because they will rage quit their money, but they won't be able to like tell us what we should do or like sway our voting with like big token stakes, as seems to be something that will easily be happening in other DAOs that have like token based voting.
Yeah, yeah, totally. So, do you have any sense of what percentage of investors are coming from the like traditional capitalist mindset? versus the more like egalitarian like Web3 mindset?
So far, none. Like from the whole world, I haven't talked to anybody. There was one that contacted me after the latest newsletter, and I can't remember what it was called, but it sounded super corporate, and the website was super corporate. And I told him, hey, like there's no equity and there's no like legal paperwork. There's just tokens, and that's it. And he said, yeah, okay. And I said, yeah, because like your website looks pretty traditional. And he was like, oh yeah, it's just because we're like marketing to traditional investors to invest in our fund, but they will still like just buy tokens.
Yeah. Yeah, who knows?
First of all, I want to raise as much as possible from individuals that are like in crypto rather than funds. And then with funds, I will focus on DAOs. There aren't many like DAO funds, but there's a few, and then we'll see how far we get with that. And then like traditional VCs with like they're in traditional, but traditional crypto VCs are like the last resort.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. It's always kind of a challenge. Like I'm sure you experienced this as well, and probably everyone in the crypto scene, like trying to explain like what the hell metagame is or what a DAO is to someone who's like totally outside of the community, totally not educated about crypto or blockchain as a whole. It's always like a challenge explaining kind of how everything works. And I feel like every time I go there, there's like one or two things that I'm like starting to explain. I'm just like, oh shit, I don't actually understand how this works. And like, there's this obvious thing, there's this obvious pitfall that I just like thought of while trying to explain it to somebody else. And I'm like, uh-oh, I don't know the answer to this. But I'm sure someone else has thought about it or, attempted to get around it.
Yeah, the thing is that like even in people that are in crypto don't necessarily know, hey, like crypto could be used for building whole new world. Most of the people that are new to crypto are like, yeah, there are these coins, you can make money, there are NFTs, you can make money with NFTs. And that's about as much as they know about crypto. And in our case, you have to like understand the crypto a bit more deeply, but you also need to understand like why is like gamification powerful. Like with some people, I would have to explain to them the meta again. They don't even know what freelancing is.
Oh boy, yeah.
It's impossible
That's a bridge
to.
too far. Yeah.
It's absolutely impossible. Yeah. Just today, I'm thinking more about the like the onboarding that comes before the Discord onboarding that isn't built, because I was talking to Dave and he's building designing the new landing page, and this Buick told me that my meta profile should now be a week away. So theoretically, it won't be long before we can connect the new landing page to the profile creation flow, which should so either before the profile creation or after. I think there should be some kind of a dialogue where you like answer the ask you like we try to assess like what's your understanding level, and you go, okay, do you know what is crypto? Okay, do you know it can be used for things other than making money? Okay, do you have a MetaMask installed? Okay, go explore the house of DAOs or like house of Ethereum. Do you know what DAOs are? Go explore there and that sort of stuff. To begin with, it can be just text, but eventually all of these questions could be like, okay, the bot is asking you questions, and then he gives you these choices, and these choices are quests. And like he tells you, okay, if you want to learn more about this, take this quest that says go to the house of Ethereum and dig deeper, and then write a short report on what did you find.
Nice. Yeah. So is the idea that that's like a Discord bot?
I mean, no. The idea is to make it like a proper UI on the website after we have the landing page and the my meta profile creation. But yeah, like when those things start to come together, that's what's going to be like easier to explain metagame, because right now it's still like it's all these different pieces all over the place, and people are like, okay, I understand the basic idea, but how do I use this? Like, what is like what?
Yeah. Like the overall vision is really exciting and I think motivating, and like almost any like traditional game A like community or organization would just like give anything to have the amount of like organic influx of people that we do. And that's just because like, we're solving like the biggest problem there is. It's like, how do you actually coordinate at scale? But yeah, I remember when getting started about a year ago, I was totally new to like Ethereum, and so I had to go through the process of like setting up MetaMask, and for me, it was pretty important to at least have like a cursory knowledge of the like economic system. And so I feel like I did a fair amount of research to figure out how that all works. And I wrote this little like document that was like a fictional conversation between like someone well versed in crypto and someone who wasn't, basically explaining how XP and cred works within our little like niche of like the Web3 world. And yeah, like some people probably don't care, and they're just like, cool, this, I'll just click some buttons and get stuff set up. And it's actually not that hard if you have good documentation. So like get all the like nuts and bolts set up. Like I'm sure it's a lot better than it was like 4 years ago, for instance, to get started. But yeah, and then there's people like me that's, I don't get into new things without a lot of research. And so, and we don't necessarily have to provide that content, but it does seem like it's useful for a certain like segment of people that are new to Web3. But then again, you're saying that almost nobody getting into MetaGame is actually new to Web3, so maybe it doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah, those first few steps will probably just get skip, skip, skip. I have MetaMask. Let's just get into it. But yeah, it's still important to have. And I think also like weaving stuff like what kind of problems do you have, or like what kind of things you're looking for, and then maybe even direct into like other kind of, as you said, like healing stuff. And you mentioned that sort of healing and well-being a bunch of times previously, which reminded me this good timing, because it just 2 days ago when I was writing the quests, one of them was start writing the House of Well-being, which I think is time we had it, because we have the House of Ethereum, House of DAOs, House of NFTs, House of DeFi, House of Dapps, and I think now it's time to make that House of Well-being. Like, okay, there's all of this stuff, but please don't burn out, and maybe heal yourself, and maybe meditate, maybe go read this book on psychology or whatever.
Yeah, totally. Like there's some pretty like kind of no-brainer, practical, pragmatic advice that we can provide, but we probably don't want to go too deep. And I feel like that's where like partnerships with other like organizations and
Yeah. Like I really see us more so as the curators of all of this knowledge, not that we will like make all this content, but more so explore and then index, upvote content, and then have other people dig in and maybe dig up some new piece of content and then add it to the great house, or that sort of stuff. Maybe write a playbook that links to the bigger resource. And it's the same how I see the skill trees developing. Like there are all of these skills, but there's this skill you can go to Coursera and learn it. And there's this skill you can go to the blockchain academy, something, learn that there, that kind of thing.
Yeah, like I know you've mentioned this before, how like metagame is trying to do a lot of things, and I see a lot of value in providing the like most useful content for people kind of coming into the system. It seems like we're doing better than most other DAOs in terms of like being receptive to people from all over the world and from all kind of stripes. And so like showing that we actually care about people's well-being like goes a long way towards that like welcoming feeling.
Right. Yeah. I also started an issue that I had this idea since like pretty much since I started thinking about metagame, but the issue still didn't exist, which is like when you connect a wallet, the game asks you like, "Hey, how are you doing today?" or something like that, and then you can answer, and then you can say, "Okay." It can ask you like, "What goal do you have for today?" or like, "What frustrates you about metagame?" or any kind of question. And that's how we then get to that, being able to have on the dashboard like, okay, general happiness in metagame, like morale, It's, I think, super important metrics that we should like be having in organizations and the society in general.
Yeah, I'm sure you're frustrated with the speed of implementation for these ideas, but yeah, welcome to being a founder and a product owner to some extent. I'm sure you know a lot more than you did 2 years ago about how it just takes a long time to build these things in a way
How it actually works.
that yeah.
And also like gotten more realistic like when I just started. Well, first of all, like if I knew it was this hard, I probably never even would have started it. But like I was expecting like people to be a lot more autonomous. I thought, okay, that is going to be. I will just vaguely explain these ideas, and then people who are like self-motivated will read them and get inspired maybe, and then write like start building them. But then like, okay, no, it doesn't work like that. Like first of all, you need like things that are better specified, and you can just put on ideas and expect people to start naturally coordinating.
Yeah, I mean, like if you're attracting like entrepreneurial types, then yes. But like those entrepreneurial types that also have the skills to build it are just like vanishingly rare these days. And all of those people that exist like are probably involved with like 1,000 other projects. So
But it's also like it's much like in open source project always there's still always like a few people really driving the effort, but there needs to be at least that one person. Like if you founded a technical project, you should have like a technical person who will kind of lead it. Like if like in my case, like I'm sure that if I was a developer, the technical side would be much stronger and the community and content side would probably be weaker, because I would be able to like lead the charge there and really would be pushing that side like the whole time since the beginning, and like lead by example rather than just trying to write things.
yeah, totally. And it's I've always viewed like my participation in a metagame just as like mostly an experiment because there's like so many new things going on and so many things we're pioneering or just experimenting with, and it's like been super fascinating and also really refreshing to be working with a lot of like non-technical people. Like for me, that's really fun. Where I kind of went over my brief career history, but it's like I pretty much only work with like other men, and they're like super technical, and you only get so far with people with that kind of mindset. And so it's super fun seeing other people's ideas, and like the community really is amazing. I mean, I'm not that engaged, but oh man, there's just so much going on, and I just love just how like vibrant it is. Like we have our differences and like drama once in a while, but I don't know, it just feels really alive, and it's really fun.
Yeah, it's so lively. There were like periods of quiet, but in general, like for the past more than a year, it's been pretty lively. I still remember the early days when I would wake up and I would be happy if there was like one new message in Discord, in one channel on Discord. And like, oh, I have to read all of these messages that were new. And then with time, it became like impossible to keep up with all the channels.
Yeah, yeah. Even when I joined, like I know there were some people that were like trying to make all the channels not bold anymore. Even at that point, like I was like not ever hoping to or intending to keep up on it just because I didn't have enough time. But I knew some people were, and I was just like, oh, like how do you do this? And like work a full-time job. It's like it doesn't really work.
Yeah, but yeah, we're over an hour, so we should be looping it back in and maybe close with something like, what's your hope for the future in general, the future of metagame and that sort of stuff.
Like overall, I guess. Oof. I guess my hope is just like continued stability and hopefully a reversal of a lot of these like negative trends like in the culture wars and all of that, and like there's a lot of ways that could materialize. But I guess I am hoping to see that the greater like Web3 ethos getting more widespread and, you know, providing like a real alternative for people. It has to happen quickly enough that like the entrenched interests don't have time to kind of like take it over, which is a real concern of mine about this space, and really like any egalitarian space. Like, you know, Moloch has its own agenda, and it will, you know, it's very well financed, and there's a lot of velocity behind it. But there is like the capacity within, you know, this group of people to, you know, like really get some traction within like the greater society. And so like, yeah, like that's my hope there. And then as far as the greater world, just like a slowing down of the like slow collapse of what we're seeing right now, just in almost all aspects, like from environmental to like culture wars to general well-being. Like it's not great.
Things gonna continue degrading.
Yeah, like I don't really see that stopping, and the ways to like make changes quickly tend to be violent, so I don't really want to see that either. So it kind of has to be like a slower transition, but, you know, like we don't have a ton of time in terms of like environmental degradation. You know, like we're basically poisoning the substrate that keeps us alive, and that's like still that's not really slowing down.
Yeah. Yeah, and all of this, like, is it pronounced COP or something like that? The climate change and that sort of stuff. The huge conference where like countries say like, "Oh yeah, we agree with this," and then they just continue polluting.
Yep. Well, that's Moloch, right?
Yeah, I've been reading reports from that conference, and it's like it's so disappointing.
Yeah, I didn't even really pay attention because I was like, you know, I don't really see any meaningful change there. Just because like the structure of like the modern world is, you know, is going to cause not much change to happen very quickly, and that's, you know, if there's no violence because of that, then I think that's good. But like I think it's better to just kind of slowly plod along with what we're doing and allow for potentially a better way of living to emerge than it is to like try and make like abrupt changes in, you know, governance. And, you know, there's a lot of like dark paths that we've already gone down as a species.
Yeah, I feel it's at this point it's more impactful to try to really focus on the people and the places that are trying to do something different and try to connect all these spaces. And yeah, with MetaGame we can try to build this sort of new operating system and plug in a bunch of eco villages and that sort of places and try to help people with creating more, bridging people across these places and expanding. I think at some point, like when metagame really is like a massive online coordination game, then when maybe we might have a better chance of making an impact with more radical actions, with directly fighting some of the things that's going on that is wrong. But yeah, more so see this side of things that's not about fighting, but just building an alternative. But it's always going to clash because you can build an alternative, but if the other side doesn't do at least something, then your alternative will also be fucked at some point.
Yeah, I mean, if you can build something that's inspiring for enough people, then that's where the power is. You know, that's really the only path forward that I can see. But it's also like a very exciting path forward, and it's something that you can run with. You know.
Yeah, we've been running with it. Just need to make it more palatable and make the nicer UIs and explain it better and everything. But I think we're on the right path. That's what it seems.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, yeah, perfect note to end it on. Thank you so much for joining me. This was great.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Thanks for the invite. Yeah, I'll see you on Discord.
Yeah, see you around, man.